time for House to Home with your host, Clyde Hawsey, where you'll hear from local people who turn houses into homes all across the inland Northwest, and you'll learn how to do the same. House to Home is brought to you in part by River Ridge Hardware, Avista, and Rada Paint. Now, here's your host, Clyde Hawsey.
And welcome again to House to Home. I'm Clyde Hawsey, and I have a very special guest here today. And a lot of you may already know who he is. It's Guy Gifford. Guy, thank you for coming from Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, you know, I usually talk to you later in the fall or later in the summer, but it's springtime and the grasses are just turning green.
Yes, they are just turning green. Things are starting to grow out there finally, so things are looking green again.
Yeah, and that also means fuel for the fires later on in the season, right?
Yes, the grass is starting to grow, and we'll see what they turn into this fall or this summer.
Yes, well, you know, there's a lot of preparation, and that's why we're talking to you today here, folks, is that the preparation of getting involved here is very important, that we find out why and how come we should get involved and take care of a yard and to have fire prevention. We've all heard those terms before, but I talked to Guy and I said, guess what? We need to have you in here now, because good planning is good strategy for safe living. And in the Northwest, we love our country, we love our Northwest, and we really have to say, if we don't protect it, we've got other serious problems. So I asked Guy, I said, come on in, let's start talking about it. Guy, you've sent us over some pictures as we begin to look at them coming down the way here, but a lot of this is good planning, and last fall we should have been looking at taking care of some of these issues around there, right?
Fall is a great time to start, especially in the forest environment, to start looking at the forest, looking at what trees to remove, what trees to cut, and start doing some of that work. The fall is the best time, but now is not too late to do it.
Well, yes, and it is not too late. In fact, I was up in the woods here the other day, and I was noticing that actually in some cases, you got to watch where you're walking, or if you have a piece of equipment, you can still get it stuck in some of those soft areas. But folks, it is the right time to get out there, get the chainsaw going, get it going, and start cleaning up things, because that's so important now. You sent along some pictures that I would hope that we can be looking at and beginning to identify some of the thickets, and I'm going to put it right back to you folks. The issue is you can be living in town, and you still have this vacant lot next to you, or a bunch of trees in the backyard, and they need to be thinned out, cleaned up, and addressed, right? Because that's where these little problems can take place. And we see not always is a big fire the big problem, but a lot of these smaller fires really happens. And you were sharing that story also.
Yeah, last year in Spokane County, a couple of the structures we lost were actually to small fires. When flames are small, when the fires are actually very small in size. And the steps the homeowners could do were very simple on those fires. That's just creating what we call home ignition zone, trying to reduce the impact of the homes being ignited.
Well, if we can be looking at some of those pictures, then let's take a look at those and begin to identify that vacant lot, shall we say, and around the foundation of our home. You know, we have, here's bark mulch, for example, around our home, which we all promote as being so, what they call it was a beauty bark?
Beauty bark, yes.
I call it a fire hazard, don't you?
And these are two things in this slide. First, the bushes are junipers. And all that stuff down there was fallen just from the junipers. In firefighting, we like to call those Roman candles, because the juniper puts dry material on the ground that's easily ignited from an ember from a wildfire.
Right.
And that ember can easily ignite that juniper, and in that scenario, if that juniper bush would be on fire, the house would have been on fire.
And junipers, as he is saying, because when they take off, I've seen them take off and just ignite to no end. I mean, they just explode. They are candles, right?
They are candles. They're highly flammable.
There's a closer picture of it, and especially right up next to the home, which is, again, it is clad wood, it's wood, and underneath that or above it is the eave, and guess what happens? It gets caught into that area. So here's a combination of looking at this. We have some gravel along with the bark, and folks, I'm saying, what is the option? Gravel with dirt will give you the same effect.
Much better choices, gravel or dirt instead of the mulch, because one of the things that those earlier pictures showed was a home that looked like it was in a subdivision. It was, but that subdivision was only a couple hundred yards from the woods, and embers from a wildfire will travel a mile.
I know, that's what's really scary. You think you got it pretty well safe, but I guess they can travel in the air for a long period of time. And so that's what we need to stay on top of. So again, beauty bark is not always the best answer. Here again is another example that we could actually be looking at. Either allow the grass to go up to the foundation or turn around and put in some gravel in there. Do not have the bark there, because now the fire would just go right up under the cladwood in there. So,
Under the cladwood, or if you notice, that's next to a natural gas pipe.
Okay, well, Guy's been through this before. Well, here again, using gravel in some of these areas is a very good protection. And around the gas meter, again, have some gravel in there. That would be a big help, right?
The nice thing what this picture shows is a lot of people don't worry about their outbuildings. This is a shed that had rocks, so this landowner did a lot of good to protect the sheds. Because one of those weak points is a shed 10 feet from the house. If the shed catches on fire, then the house will start on fire.
Well, the one picture I was just noticing there, look at the leaves on top of the roof. Here again, that's a prime example of where we need to go out and start upkeeping of our spring gardening, or that could be fall, whatever it may be. It actually looks like springtime.
That is a springtime picture, and yeah, it's a simple step they could do right now. Remove that and reduce that hazard. They did have good landscaping around the bottom, but they do need to take care of that roof there. That looks like it's protecting their bikes.
Well, it's also that, and it's also the rain gutters. And here underneath your deck, here's another prime area that we need to be looking at. Folks, we're going to show you areas around your home that you need to look at, and that's one of them also. The leaves grow and actually blow underneath it, right?
Yeah, the leaves blow underneath it. Burning material can get underneath it. So that picture does have some screening. It'd be nice if it was a mesh screening.
Yes.
To eliminate those leaves getting in, eliminate the embers getting in. But yeah, what's underneath that deck? We can't see from this picture, but right now I can tell you an ember could easily get underneath that deck during a wildfire. And the question is, what's under that deck? Leaves or rock?
Right. Well, and I think right now it actually looks like rock, a little bit halfway there. Here again on a hillside is a prime example of what is being done on that hillside. What's happening here?
A lot of good landscaping. They put a lot of rock in. They got dirt. They do have trees, but those trees are maintained. They limbed up the trees.
They branched them up.
So reduce the chance of those trees catching on fire. So this is a nice example of some steps the landowner did to reduce the impact of wildfire around their home.
Ever so true. Different options. Oh, here's a good one. I really like low maintenance. We got some hardscapes, which is pavers, and we have gravel, and I even like the garden hose ready to go.
This is a great picture. This is very, very low risk for the embers catching anything on fire right next to the home.
If you notice, folks, underneath the home itself, there's an overhang coming out, and under there, it's all gravel. It's not plant material. And that's very important.
And one of the things about the overhangs, anything under an overhang is higher chance of those overhangs catching on fire than just a flat wall. So those overhangs are really critical, being clear underneath or having non-burnable material underneath those overhangs.
And because they're always dry up underneath, right? And here you go on this corner planting here, we got the same thing, concrete curbing. Looks like bark in there. Am I correct? Is that?
That is some mulch. The nice thing about this one, or pseudo nice thing, it is a distance from their house, it looks like.
Okay.
And so if you're going to use beauty bark, at least this landowner did it at least 25 feet from their house.
Okay.
And so if you could isolate that beauty bark in a circle way into your yard, then you reduce the risk factor.
Well, you know, all of these ideas here in the pictures you're showing us are great ideas for the outlying areas that we do live in. Natural landscaping is beautiful, which is the trees and the forest here. Now, looking at this picture out beyond the lawn and beyond the gravel and a patio, and it looks good, but there's a defensible area there. Is another word we want to use?
That's the word we call it, defensible area, and they've done a good job, especially underneath the deck here, because people don't always realize the deck, from a fire standpoint, is just an extension of the house. So having this around the decks is very, very important. And the proper plant. Some of those earlier pictures showed they had beauty bark, not the best choice, but they also had good plant choices.
Yes.
If they had beauty bark and bad plant choices, doesn't matter where it's at, it's a bad decision.
Well, and I'm going to throw out the word grasses. There's people that have been planting ornamental grasses around. Watch where you plant them. You know, it's just because it's just a little grass. It can be a real fire trap. Am I correct?
Yes, and for us, we don't like to see those ornamental grasses within 5 feet of the structure.
There you go.
Because that's that critical spot right next to the structure. Keep them at least 5 feet. Put them more like that 20 to 30 foot area around your structure.
Okay, we'll work with you on that one a little bit. Here again, we even have a nice defensible area with the green grass, right?
Green grass and more of that what you called hardscaping next to it. So very good protection and actually very nice looking as well.
It looks nice and clean and it's crisp, and again, it can be addressed. Here we got some more gravel and bark, or a little bit of a combination of the two. Is that correct or
It's
not?
a little combination of the two, and sometimes it's always not cut and dry. What's your priority?
Right.
In this case, if you notice, the beauty bark is next to, looks like their patio.
Right.
So the question is, does that beauty bark go all the way to the house?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And so, or if that's a deck, wooden deck, then that's a very poor choice to make. Here, it's probably okay. Just from this picture, it's probably okay.
Are you saying a little bit of common sense?
Yes, common sense.
Well, and as you move along, oh, now here comes into a natural area outside of that of the actual maintained yard. We've got a lot of undergrowth, shall we say?
A lot of undergrowth, but at least they thinned the trees up. They've limbed the trees up.
Right.
And so it's not too bad. Anything will burn. We're trying to get to a low risk, or what we call, when the fire does burn, it burns with lower intensity. And this kind of shows an example of an area that would burn with lower intensity because of the steps they took by removing a bunch of the small trees.
Well, and I think that this is one of the things that you and I have worked at my own place, and you helped me work through that. But you always said branch it up, 10 feet up, because branches are going to naturally bow down a little bit. But the flames typically 6 to 10 feet, so if you can keep it at least 10 foot up with the branching, as this is showing.
Yeah, great choice they did. You're pruning
Right.
them up, limbing them up like that. Here in this picture, some of the branches may be a little low, so they could do some more pruning up here to lift what we call those
thinning.
ladder fields, and thinning.
Yeah, because it's almost close to being a thicket, you might say.
Yeah, it is a thicket. It looks like they did some work, but maybe it was a while ago, so this is time they need to do more work, more maintenance again.
Right. Well, and as we progress through these pictures, folks, you're going to begin to see we've really identified a lot of things, and as we will look into this more and more. But these outlying thicket areas are very important that we maintain them this time of the year. Don't wait till the fire season, right?
Yeah, don't wait till the fire season. One of the things about waiting the fire season is chainsaws, chippers in the woods can start fires.
Yes.
And so you're just adding risk out there. You want to do your work before it's hot out there.
Okay. Folks, we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back we're going to talk about more of these areas around your home that you need to deal with. Again, I'm Clyde Hosey with Guy Gifford from DNR, and he's going to help us out, and we're going to identify the right choices you can make around your home. Come back and
This
join
is
us.
River Ridge Frame Shop, called Frame It Today, where we can take your art, customize it, and get it ready to hang on the wall. Here at River Ridge Hardware, 2803 West Garland.
To help you be safe, Washington state law requires you to call 811 2 full business days before you plan, for example, to dig, drill, plow, pull from, or pound anything into the ground. Be prepared to provide the operator with the correct address, cross street, and the description of your work. You must mark the dig area with white paint. The operator will inform you of the utilities notified of your impending excavation. Wait for all their marks. Be safe and dig with care.
See you tomorrow night, and thanks again for taking care of the painting.
I got this.
Bye.
Weekends are made for painting. Let the experts at Rada Paint take care of you.
Hi. This looks amazing.
Rada Paint, over 80 years of quality, tradition, and trust. Find it in every can.
And welcome back. I'm Clyde Hosey with House to Home, and today I have Guy Gifford with the Department of Natural Resources. Again, thank you for coming back. We've been talking about how and why you should be dealing with your yard even early in the spring, all the way through the summer. You've got to be aware of what's around you. And Guy, you've seen a lot of homes, you've seen problem childs, and the pictures you've been furnishing us, the first part of the program was all about choices you can make in picking the right plant material, because what you pick is what you're going to have to be dealing with when the case comes around when you do have a fire. So right choices is what you're saying.
That is true. We always say the right plant in the right spot in the right condition. Is it dead or is it live? Is it healthy or unhealthy?
Right.
Those are the keys to success in protecting your home from wildfire.
Right. Well, just before we went to a break, we were looking at some of the pictures of the outlying areas or I should say around the home, and we were just beginning to go into that. If we can go into that outlying areas and take a look at that and then see what happens when we don't. Here's some prime pictures that it looks like some thinning out is taking place. This is the typical thicket, shall we say. Am I right on that one, Guy, around the area?
This is in a lot of our areas, look this thick. And the place in front of that pink ribbon has been thin, where behind it has not. So it's trying to show you a difference in how the stands can look different. And the other thing is it helps the trees.
It's a healthy, folks, you think the forest will take care of itself. It doesn't. It can actually choke itself, right?
It can choke itself out. I had an example from a tree that was cut down a couple years ago, and the landowner thinned it 10 years before. And before the thinning, it was taking 14 years to grow 1 inch in diameter. After
Wow.
they did this work, it took 4 years to grow that 1 inch. So it's quadrupled its growth because of this work.
You know, a forest will tell you a lot of things of how you've actually been a good steward of the land or you have not. And that's what you're saying.
Yep.
And if we enjoy those trees and we enjoy the beauty of the trees, then let us take interest into it, folks. Don't ignore it. Here again is some other prime examples of that. It's totally a thicket. It has no value to it whatsoever.
And those trees in that thicket will never become large trees
No.
like we like.
No, exactly. They'll always be sick trees. They're always fighting for the same nourishment.
They'll be sick until they burn up.
Okay, you're right directly to the point, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, here again, it looks like some of your people were in the process of cleaning up some of those areas, and this is what you don't want to see happening in your vacant lot or around your home, right?
Yeah, these are firefighters. Look like they're digging a trail around this little fire here to make sure it stays out. But any steps people can do with thin trees helps these guys out all the time to reduce that intensity of the fire out in the woods.
You bet. And it's not an easy chore, and guess what? We expect them to be there, and again, we need to participate to support them. Now, here's a prime example of what you're looking at, someone who has taken a little bit of initiative and cleaned up some of the woods, right?
Yeah, they did a lot of nice thinning. They left some big trees and some small trees, so for over time, that forest will change in a positive way that keeps the trees healthy and reduce the impact of wildfire to this land plus the homeowners around it.
Right, and the greenness underneath and the healthiness of the undergrowth is actually being brought back in some cases because it is getting sunlight.
People are amazed. I work with landowners that they said, I got wildflowers now. I said, that's because you have sunlight touching your ground.
Yeah, well, and we just don't understand our woods, and it's pretty basic. Here again, we're looking at some of the areas of the heaviness of the foliage, and even it looks like some discoloration taking place. But that can happen when you don't have a healthy situation, right?
Yeah, and that was just showing a little grass fire there and how it impacts on the trees as an early season fire, looking at the greenness, but still damaged some of our trees.
You bet. Just because we have green grass on doesn't mean that it won't burn, right?
That is correct.
As you can see on the picture here, I mean, look at all the green grass that was there and the green trees, and yet they still burned.
Yes, and so anything can burn, especially when we get wind and a couple hot days. And a lot of times this year we can get things burning because we have all that down material from last fall that just dries out right now.
And a very wet spring. And here's another example of that vacant lot next door, you might say. Folks, it needs to be cleaned up, and it would look so much better. And when you're showing people your yard and showing the outlying areas, this just shows that you care.
Yes, and I understand. I've worked with a lot of people over the years. They always struggle cutting those first couple trees.
Oh, I know.
But after they're done, a week later, they go, wow, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. It looks so much better.
It does. And look at the clear view, you might say. Immediately, this place here is they've been cleaning it up. There was all this thicket around it. You couldn't even see into the forest. Now you can look into the forest and begin to have a nice background. And you actually feel a little bit safer.
Feel safer, and a lot of people said, I can see the critters now. I can see the
yes.
wildlife. I can see the deer.
Yes.
There's a lot of benefits that people highlight to me, the immediate benefits they see, which is those things. They don't see fire not coming through the woods. They just see the immediate benefits seeing things out there.
Well, we need to be not experiencing what you did. I know last fall you had summer you had some real fires that took place up in Northwood, and it was so scary to us all that live out here in the Spokane Valley. I mean, it was right in our backyard, you might say, and those people really experienced it, right?
They did, and they had, like that picture there, they had slope, which caused a fire to go even faster up the hill. And so really thinning those trees on slopes is even more critical because fire burns so much quicker and hotter going uphill.
It rolls uphill, right?
It rolls uphill.
So when you actually are looking at this, and let's just stop here for a second and say that if you're on a hillside and your home is at the top of the hill, at least have 30 to 60 to 80 feet of clear space around it. Am I correct on that?
Yes. On slope, you want more than that recommended 30 feet. That 60 to the 80 feet will give you much more benefit than just the 30 feet when you're on slope.
And if you're out in the area that you can, keep it mowed down. So maybe we can experience some of that or in some of these pictures, especially on the hillside, in the rolling hills, shall we say, of the Spokane area. You got to keep things low cut as much as possible, right?
Yeah, and the nice thing about that, when it's not being irrigated, you really only need to cut it once, right before the 4th of July, because the trees are the grass goes in dormancy, and they won't grow again until the next year. So a lot of times a one-time cut only in those areas, non-irrigated areas.
Well, let's just not tease everybody. Do it a couple times so you get it down short. I'm with them, and because here again, as a fire goes up a hillside, it's going to burn upward and the flames go upward. But keep the growth and keep the grasses down at all times, and that's so important. As we look into these pictures, we've seen some examples of how people, what they need to be doing. And I'm going to tell you, as a landscape architect, folks, years ago we used to plant junipers. Guess what? We don't plant junipers anymore. Why? Because it is just like what you're talking about, a candlestick, right?
Yes, a Roman candle, we call them.
Okay. And you want to go ahead and identify that there are some varieties of plants that you can use. We've covered a lot of areas here with you folks, and we're getting close to the end here. But, Guy, fill us in. How do you want to be able to say, you know what, I talked on the air and we talked about some of these things, and now I remember, we were saying there's some things that you have to get in and do, and what are those things right now?
One of the things right next to your home, make sure nothing there will burn. No beauty bark within that first 5 feet of the home, no newspapers in the summer, nothing that will be left there that could easily
firewood.
Or firewood. Then outside of that, 30 feet away, you want a landscape that won't readily burn. Your yard, your garden, your driveway. You might have a little beauty bark out there, but it's away from the house. Ideally, you don't, but you may. And then outside of that, you just, we want smaller flames. So thinning those trees so the fire is not as intense outside of that into that third zone, 30 feet plus.
So, again, I want to share is that you can do any of this preparation anytime beginning in the fall, through the spring, and through the summer, and then back into the fall again. It needs to be looked at all times. Just because you may clean it up one time, it's like cleaning the room, You can't just clean it one time and it's always clean. No, that isn't true. And you have to maintain it is what we're trying to say. Am I right?
Maintenance is the key thing, and getting starting that maintenance now in the springtime and making sure it's maintained during the summer is the key to success, because things do change around your home during the summer when it gets hotter and hotter and hotter.
Well, I always appreciate, Guy, you come here and you share with us, you bring us great ideas. And again, for you, the homeowner, and people that are renting places that have a vacant lot next door with the trees, take some interest in it. It's for the renewable Mother Nature, you might say, is going to be there for you. She'll always be taking care of it. And Guy, you take care of us. I know, rain and shine and in the fires, you're always there. I see you on the news and I say, I bet Guy is there, and there he is. So Guy, I want to say thank you personally. I really appreciate all your help you've given us, and I know that you folks will, again, appreciate what we just shared with you. So, again, thank you, Guy. We look forward to hearing from you again. We'll be talking to you very soon. I'm Clyde Hossie, Guy Gifford from DNR. Talk to you next time on House to Home.
Thanks for watching. House to Home is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksMedia.com, which is solely responsible for its content. House to Home is sponsored in part by our friends at Rada Paint, River Ridge Hardware, and Avista. Ask Clyde a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com.